Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and The Daily Critique. Today's image was submitted by Ed, who's an intermediate photographer. Ed says that this is his first attempt at a panorama. He wanted to shoot a picture of this nature center, but he wanted to do it very environment dominant, so he got sort of all the varieties of wetlands that are surrounding this nature center. And Ed shot this with a Pentax K20D. The effective focal length here is close to 50 millimeters. And at ISO 250, Ed stopped down to f20 and exposed 6 files at a 1/125th of a second. And he shot 6 vertical frames here that were all overlapped 30 to 50%. Took those inside of Photoshop and used photo merge to create the panorama. And one of the first things I'll say about this is just Ed's done a great job from a technical standpoint, if this is his first panorama, in shooting these files in a way where photo merge and Photoshop could do a great job of seamlessly stitching everything together. I really enjoy the sky in this image. If you're going to shoot this loose and have that much sky, what a great day, what a great moment to have this really beautiful pattern of cumulus clouds. The other thing I like about the sky is it's creating a pattern of shadow and light and then shadow that's really helping to pop out the nature center here and just make the feeling of light more dynamic. This is the sort of brightest part of the day. You can tell from the way the shadows are falling, and the clouds are not only a beautiful subject, they're helping to keep the light from being as flat as it might have been without any sky. The other thing that I'm enjoying here is the dynamic placement of the nature center, the main subject, and a complementary subject here, sort of a balancing subject, this group of palms. And not only is the placement dynamic, but it's congruent with the framing device. This gives me a chance to revisit this idea of framing and subject placement. So just real quick, maybe I'll do a better job of explaining this time, maybe not. 35 millimeter is approximately 5 by 7.5. And if we take this side, the 5-inch side, and bring it around over here and straighten this whole thing out, so this is 12.5 inches now, 7.5 plus 5.5. And then cut this where we would need to cut it to swing this back down, we could come up with a ratio that would describe the relationship between these two lines that make the sides. So we could take 7.5, the long side, and divide that by the total length of the line, 12.5, and we would get about 0.62. And so in a rectangular frame shot, our 35 millimeter rectangular framing, when we talk about rule of thirds, it's not just something that's been pulled out of the air. It's actually relative to the rectangular framing device. It's relative to this ratio. That's why it is creates a visual harmony and is generally pleasing when we take our main subject and place it in an area of the image that represents that ratio. In a panoramic shot like this one is 13 by 5. If we take 13 and 5 and get 18 and divide that, or take 13 now and divide 18 into it, we'll get 0.72. So instead of rule of thirds, which would be 0.66, an approximation up here, this is more like rule of quarters, 0.75. So taking the main subject and pushing it even further out, like Ed has done here, is congruent with the more dynamic, more panoramic framing. And I had fun with this before, and I'll have a little bit of fun with it again. There are some people who really like to pat themselves on the back as iconoclasts who make a habit out of framing everything square, and they say they're rule breakers by centering their subject, when in fact, I don't know if it's lost on them or not, that rule of thirds is relative to your framing device, but if you square your crop, then centering your subject is more often than not what's going to create a feeling of congruency or visual unity with your framing device, because you now have sides that are equidistant and the same subject, the same size, same distance from each other. And so now placing your subject in the middle can be very visually appealing based on this idea of subject placement and the ratio that we can describe by looking at the total length of the line here and then dividing where we would split the line to create the relationship between the sides on our framing device. This couldn't be any more classic in terms of the subject placement relative to that. When I started thinking about perfect world improvement for this one, one of the things that I think of immediately is that to get away, in my opinion, with this kind of loose framing on the Nature Center, as much as I like all this information, I feel like this would have to be printed really big, so the Nature Center could really sort of get the viewer's attention. Something else that I'd really be looking at here, if I was trying to shoot this at this time of day, is I would be looking at these clouds and where they are in the frame. And this cloud in particular for me is really starting to keep me from moving over to the main subject. It harmonizes the sea palms. This is a real dramatic movement of energy. It's on a real powerful diagonal. The cloud itself now is in the middle of the frame, and if I start to center something in a big panoramic like this, it could really stop me from getting to one side or the other of the image, unless I have two subjects that are out here that are very dynamic, that could sort of pull me in either direction. And if I was sitting there watching this, I would sort of be praying that this cloud or these clouds were moving in this direction, and I would wait for this cloud in particular to come over here. I'd be thinking about a triangle where two sides of this very visually powerful triangle are over here, so that there's actually more weight towards my main subject. And I'm just going to show you a really rough approximation of this I've done with just rescaling. The other thing that rescaling has done in this case is it's created a shape out of this that sort of harmonizes the palms, so that there is a real powerful movement over to this cloud, and this is going to draw more attention to the main subject with this cloud over here. And notice how I've tried to take it and get it a little bit off center in this direction. So instead of putting it straight overhead, I'm trying to create a little bit of visual tension there and set up a triangle that can draw attention to the main subject. And I'd really be looking at that if I was there shooting. You know, there are two other things that I think about here in just the most basic sense. One would be a different quality of light. If you wanted to shoot at this environment dominant and get away with the Nature Center being this small, you could do it at twilight. Light the whole thing up, shoot it in soft twilight, and have the warm glow of the architecture and the contrast really draw your eye over there, and it could be very, very small but still be the main idea. The other thing that you could do here is you could scale up the middle part of the shot. What's around what's in these areas of the image is fairly homogeneous, and you could come in and make a selection like this and put it up on its own layer and scale that part and then blend it back with everything else to make the Nature Center a little bit bigger. And I've done a very rough job of that there. I used to do, when I was shooting a lot of commercial architecture, a ton of stuff like this to make the main subject a little bit more dominant. And the interesting thing is, you know, I mean, we could launch into the whole reality and photography and all of that, which most people that know me know that when I hear people talking about photography being truth, I really wonder, I have to tell you, I really wonder about those people. But sorry, I got a little carried away there. When you're standing there looking at something like this, the reality of it is that your mind goes out and sees the Nature Center much bigger, and then you take in everything else and you form a mental memory or image of the whole environment. And so in some respects, this is actually closer to what's happening when you're standing there. The Nature Center doesn't seem this far away, and doing a bit of rescaling like this not only makes the main subject stand up more, it actually in a lot of ways is going to would resonate with the memory of the viewer. I'm almost convinced of this from shooting so much of this stuff for clients. It would resonate with the memory of the viewer more than shooting this sort of wide or semi-wide or with a normal lens way far away and having the Nature Center get as small as it is here. The other thing that you could do, way more complicated, you could actually shoot this panorama with two different focal lengths. Shoot it wide to get all your environment that you wanted to get, and then come in with a longer focal length and shoot the middle part that has the Nature Center and the sea palms, and then bring all those together. And in a scene like this where the information around those main subjects is fairly homogeneous, you'd probably be fairly easy to get away with that. Great job here by Ed of doing his first panoramic from a technical standpoint. Really great moment with the sky. And you know, I didn't mention this, but I'll mention it right now. I mean, just in terms of the framing, something else I really like is the way this line of grasses leads out to the main subject, and the architecture here is leading, and I like the way this is sort of dynamically moving me towards the idea of the Nature Center, and we want to thank Ed for sharing this image with us on the Mindful Eyes Daily Critique. Hope to see you again soon, everybody.